The Morning Sports Desk, available on demand on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and WDCradio.com.
It is the Morning Sports Desk on a Wednesday, the 16th of October. Corey, MEA week has just gotten me all out of sorts here. It feels like a Tuesday, but it's kind of a Friday because there's football going on. There was volleyball the night before. Just all messed up today, you know?
Yeah, it does that. And if you think it's weird today, imagine how you're going to feel tomorrow when you have a football game and you've trained your body to know that the next day is just Saturday. And then your alarm's going to go off because I'm gone tomorrow. Your alarm's going to go off extra early and you're going to feel like bad.
Yeah. No, actually, you're wrong. It won't be my alarm. It'll be Kyle giving me a call at 6. Like, are you coming in today? Yeah. Are you sick? Like, do you need help? What's going on? The answer is yes, but that's beside the point. Yeah. So we had a lot of stuff to talk about today. We have some volleyball that we need to recap, a couple football games. We have some audio from Wadena Deer Creek head coach Kyle Petermeier that we wanted to break down and kind of give you a little tease because he had a lot of stuff to say for a Wolverines weekly interview that he really wanted to get out there and let people kind of know his perspective. So we had a lot of stuff to talk about, plus a goalie goal. Corey, what the heck is going on?
Goalie
goal. All right. So a lot of stuff going on. Let's recap things back to Wadena Deer Creek volleyball. They clinched their third consecutive Park Region Conference title last night with a 3-set victory over New York Mills. Corey, Wadena Deer Creek is undefeated in the Park Region Conference in 2024. They were undefeated in 2023. They were also undefeated in 2022. In fact, their last loss in the Park Region Conference came back in 2021 against New York Mills. So that all kind of came full circle there last night. The Wolverines, since joining the Park Region Conference, now have won their 7th PRC out of the 10 seasons now that they've been a part of the PRC. So a good run of volleyball there for the Wolverines. They take care of business. New York Mills, a nice team. They have some good players. Obviously, it looks 3-0, but they did play well. They fought with Wadena Deer Creek through those 3 sets. So it's not, you could necessarily see it as like, oh, well, Mills didn't play good. They did play good. They just, Wadena Deer Creek's a good 2-way team. And that's just kind of where you leave things. But a big moment in this game for Wadena Deer Creek was Payton Gravelle getting her 1,000th kill. And I always appreciate this. This is a little inside baseball for people. When we get going to do play-by-play, when there are big milestones, we usually don't know when they're coming up. And when coaches just give us a little, hey, just so you know, this player's probably going to hit this milestone in the game, just so you're aware. And I think sometimes they just say, like, just so when the game stops, like, what's going on. But also for us, it's if you want to use this throughout your broadcast, you should do it. And Sue Volkman told me before the game, like, Payton Gravelle needs 15 kills to get to 1,000. I'm like, oh, cool. All right. Perfect. That's something you can tease throughout the game. And she got it in the second set and got that taken care of. A nice moment, obviously, to do it on your home floor. She was going to get there at some point, but to do it in front of the home fans on the last regular season home game and to have the student section decked out in pink, holding up the little 1,000 signs and doing the thing is always, it's a cool moment nonetheless, but just to get to do it in that situation is always cool. Wadena Deer Creek comes away with the win. Payton Gravelle finishes with 19 kills on the afternoon. I thought the Wolverines offense played really well outside of that. Kennedy Ness had a good game. I thought Jada Dykoff had one of her better games of the season from a hitting perspective. The Wolverines just feel like they're hitting their stride like we talked about. And for New York Mills, just to give them a little bit of praise, because again, they did play a nice game. They did what they needed to do. Talking with Coach Tammy Olson before the game, I said, obviously you want to win the Park Region Conference. You want to have that. Is that like a rallying cry for your team pregame? And she looked and she said, look, we want to win this game. We want to have an opportunity to be at the top of the conference. That's obviously important. But she's like, we want to make sure we're playing our best volleyball regardless, even if we don't win, because there's a tournament over the weekend in Underwood for New York Mills that will have some playoff seeding implications still. And it's the difference between them getting like a 3 seed and them dropping to a 4 or even a 5. So it was important for them to just make sure that they were on the right track, doing the things they needed to do. And I think they did. I thought they had a really good play in the front row. They were always knocking things down. They were always there. Sometimes Wadena Deer Creek's hits were just a little too much, but I mean, for them, they were always active. Felt like they were in the spots they needed to be. And it just felt like that's a game where I think you just shrug it off and you go, all right, it's not going to hurt us in the QRF. we move on to some games where we can pick up some points here and there. A lot of talking, Corey, but what are your thoughts?
Congratulations to Payton. 1,000 is a big number. She's just a soft. So the big numbers, I think, obviously in the future for her still remain. Congratulations to her. One quick story in regards to being told if it's going to happen or not. I went to a basketball game one time. It was in central Minnesota somewhere. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus in particular, but I remember asking, hey, you got any stats or anything like that you want to share with me, just so that way I have them for the broadcast, anything in particular? And I was told that basketball is a team sport. We don't keep individual stats. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I can appreciate that philosophy. I didn't say I don't agree with that, but I appreciate the philosophy behind it. And then really early into the second half, the game was stopped because a kid got his 1,000th career point. And I was like, hey, coach, remember that question I asked you before the game? This would have been a good thing to know. All of a sudden, when everyone just starts walking off the floor and everyone's clapping, and you just feel lost when you're hung out to dry like that.
It's your job as an announcer to know what's going on for the people that aren't there.
And I asked the question. There are times where I haven't asked the question. I just forget going in but you can see, like, there's signs everywhere. Always, like, this one was just I was really caught off guard by it. So that was nice of Coach Volkman to give you a little heads up.
Yeah, no. The other time was a basketball game last winter. Coach Kevin Thunberg of the boys basketball team looked at me prior to a game and said, hey, just so you know, Payton Church is close to getting the all-time WDC points record for boys basketball. Just thought you should know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Like, coaches, if you're listening to this, we do appreciate it when we get heads up on that, because it helps us, by the way, not only just for us so we don't look like we don't know what we're doing, because I think that's just kind of what happens, but people don't need to know that. And secondly, it lets us talk up that stat all game long and lets us get extra mention of not just, the program in the school, but that kid specifically who's going to get a milestone. You can kind of let them have that and let that be their game and their night and stuff like that. So that also is the other thing, not just because it makes us look smarter than what we probably are, but it'd be nice.
We promise we're not telling the other coaches.
Right.
We are not sharing your secrets with the other coaches. That would be ridiculous. And also, the other team knows who your best players are.
Right.
All right. So that was fun. Congratulations to Payton. It's MEA week, like you mentioned. Football on the schedule this evening. A slight change from our original schedule, but because of the change, we were able to sneak in a couple of games on our broadcast calendar.
Yeah. So Wadena Deer Creek, of course, as we talked about on the show yesterday, ended their season a couple weeks early. And we had Wadena Deer Creek and Staples Motley, not just on KWAD, but also Tyler Grunwald was going to do his call for Staples Motley on the Fan. And yeah, it just opened up now. Tyler said, hey, I'm still available if you want to do another game. And I said, yeah, let's do it. So I'm going to be doing a little 9-man football tonight. Nevis hosting Verndale, little Section 5 9-man action tonight. The Nevis Tigers are 7-0 on the season. One of the top teams in 9-man. Verndale right now in the section is sitting at a 5 seed. They are 4-3 on the campaign, and they have a QRF of 19.5. And for both these teams coming into today, obviously it's two very good 9-man programs, two very well-respected coaches, two very everything going into this one. This will be a fun one between these two teams, and I'm excited to see what happens. Obviously, Nevis has gotten the better of Verndale over the last couple seasons, but we'll see what Coach Malin and company have cooked up tonight. I've already did a pregame interview with Coach Sean Klemick of Nevis, and just talking with his team and where he feels like they've gotten better and some things that they've kind of had to scramble around to get everything ready for this season. I think it'll be a good one. You can listen to it on KWAT tonight, 101.7 FM and AM 920. Also streaming online at WDenaRadio.com/KWAD. This does have playoff implications, by the way. Nevis has locked up the 1. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. They have a 37.2 QRF value. They're 7-0. Cromwell behind him is 6-1. But looking at the standings for the top 3 are pretty much set where they're going to be. But Sabika is the 4. Verndale is the 5. Bertha Hewitt is the 6 right now. All those teams are separated by a QRF margin of 2.7. So that, I think, could be set as within margin of error. Like, they're all pretty tight with each other. And Bertha Hewitt has the tie-breaking win over Verndale. Verndale has a tie-breaking win over Sabika. Sabika has a tie-breaking win over Bertha Hewitt. So there's a little bit of this cycle of like, well, who's better than who? Because if you go by that way of thinking, everything washes out. And it'll be fascinating tonight. Sabika plays Hill City Northland. Bertha Hewitt plays McGregor. Verndale obviously playing Nevis. So tonight does have a lot of implications versus not just a home playoff game, which I think every school wants, but also the fact of if you can even just glom onto that 5 seed, you play a game that you feel, as we talked about with all the cycles, you're going to play one of those 3 teams. And you feel like you have a much more winnable scenario in that situation than you do going, not just driving to Ogilvie, which is already in and of itself a nuisance, but that team is a very big nuisance. So you just feel like your path to getting to that second round playoff game is a lot easier if you can get that 4 or 5 seed. So it'll be fascinating to see how that shakes out. Verndale in the mix for that, and we'll see what they can do tonight.
Nevis hasn't lost a game since Saturday, October 29th of the 2022 football season. 7-0 for the year. They were 13-0, defending state champions 1 year ago. And their last loss was what bought them out of the playoffs in that 2022 season. 20-7 loss to Black Duck. They're real good.
They're good. They're very good. They're a well-coached program. They're ready to go. You have to ask the question with Coach Klemick, and I did, of like, you guys are the defending state champions. How does that feel? It's my job to ask the question, and it's his job, and he did it well, to go, we let other people talk about that. We're not really focused on that. We got to try and do what we have to do to get better. And he's like, there was a point where we had to tell the kids, you got to trust the coaching staff. Like, you gotta have us ready to go. Like, we got to still figure some things out. So with all of that, it'll be a good game. I think that's a team that is ready to go, and they know Verndale's a well-coached program. They know they got guys that can do stuff, and Verndale has the advantage, according to Coach Klemick, in the size department. They feel like Verndale's a bigger team up front than they are, and they got to try and figure a way to game plan around that. And we'll see if Verndale can find a way to maximize that strength. And with some of the other things they do, obviously Verndale's going to come in with a plan. They're going to be ready to go. They're going to do all the things they need to do. So it'll be a fun game tonight. Listen on KWAD. Corey, Tyler Grunwald has a game over on the Superstation, K106. What do we got there?
New York Mills travels to Pillager. It's the Eagles and the Huskies here tonight to put a final bow on the 2024 regular season. Pillager Huskies 6-1, New York Mills 3-4. Now, these are obviously this is a non-section match. Pillager will move into the 6AA. And New York Mills, the 6A bracket. But this could be billed very simply as low scoring. And whichever team gets out in front has an immediate advantage, because both teams just like to ground and pound, get out in front. Pillager said in your awesome pre-games that you did, or preseason videos, he said we don't play football so much as we play keep away. And that's really true. They like to get up on you, and they like to beat you up and punch you in the face, and then you just well, it's a math game. You'll never get enough possessions to catch up to them. And the same is going to be true for New York Mills and the way they like to play. They want to run the ball. They want to take a long drive. They want to get it into the end zone. And then all of a sudden you've had a possession and a half and it's halftime. So I suspect this game is going to be very low scoring if everybody plays to the peak of their powers, and is going to be a very fast-paced game. And the one thing that will play into this is just the size difference in the schools, and if Pillager, just by playing a little heavier schedule as far as Osakis and Staples Motley and Breckenridge, not that New York Mills isn't playing them also, but Parker's Prairie, some like opponents here. But Pillager can score points, but they do it by beating the snot out of you along the way, right? Their lowest scoring output of the season was an 18 points victory over Osakis. Otherwise,
in week 1, by the way.
That was in week 1, exactly. Otherwise, 48 points, 27 points, 25 in a loss to Staples Motley, 47, 52, and 46 last week. So it's going to be an uphill battle probably for New York Mills against a very good Pillager team, but these two teams operate very similarly. And, if the final score of this one ended up being in that, 18-6, both teams score under 20 total points, and you're in and out in about 75 minutes, maybe a little more than that, maybe like 105 minutes. But it's going to be, somebody's going to get a bloody nose in this one.
Yeah. And the fascinating part, I did interviews for Tyler because he's on the call for this one on both of the games, or on both of he's doing the game tonight. So I had both coaching interviews that I did. And, it's funny, passing did come up for both of these teams. Talking with Coach Radnick, he said, we want to run the ball. He's like, I want to run the ball. We've been able to pass pretty well this year. And that's been something that they've been able to do as a little tendency breaker. And talking with Pillager Huskies head coach Paul Clark, he said, we can run the ball. He's like, but we got to keep teams honest. We got to be able to pass the ball. He's like, that's on our players. He's like, that's also on me as a head coach to not get to run. It's like, we want to be able to make sure that teams just can't put 10 in the box and stuff to run. We got to make sure that we can pass enough to make sure people respect that so we can get favorable matchups in the run game. How do we, it's funny. These two teams run the ball, and everything you said is correct, Corey, but it's almost like you were saying, sometimes we do have to pass to set up the run. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. It's very true. And by the way, Pillager will throw it around a little bit, and I can't seem to find my audio for it right now, but Christian Hoagie, the quarterback for Pillager, did throw the ball so hard where my completely authentic reaction to him throwing the little curl route on the outside corner was yelling holy balls. He threw that hard. So yeah, they can put it in the air if they have to. They just, I think, would prefer to tell you to try to stop them.
Right. Exactly.
This is an early start, correct? 5:40 pregame, 6 o'clock kickoff in Pillager tonight.
Yep, on the Superstation K106, 105.9 FM, also streaming online at WDenaRadio.com and the Superstation K106 mobile app. Worldwide. It's one word.
All right, CJ, we've got one more thing we need to get to and kind of need to burn through this. Let's before we do, I just want to mention and say, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. It's making news. It's actually, I've seen this story go viral on some other outlets and things like that, which is, I think it's neat to see this story kind of get some good deserved attention. And you will have a full breakdown and a full interview on the Wolverines Weekly podcast, which comes out, it airs on KWAD every Saturday. And remind me, is it released every Saturday then too in podcast form, or not till Monday?
At 9 o'clock is when we play it on the radio, and 10 o'clock, boom, it's out there on all your podcast feeds.
So the story that we're talking about, obviously, is Wadena Deer Creek football electing to forfeit the remainder of their season, the regular season and playoffs. And they had to do so really for one main point, and that is they really were dealing with a lot of injuries. And then in lieu of those injuries, some young underclassmen were being asked to step into some roles that maybe they're just not prepared for physically as an underclassman. We're talking about even down to ninth graders in some instances, and And Coach Petermeier and the administration decided, we needed to pull this plug. But I just wanted to kind of set the scene there for this conversation. You did the interview with Coach Petermeier, and I'm sure it went very well. I'm just wondering what your impressions of it were, and were there any highlights? Was there anything that stood out in that conversation with Coach Petermeier?
My main impression with Coach Kyle Petermeier, who, by the way, I should say, I didn't reach out to, we were going to do a Wolverines weekly interview regardless, but he reached out very early, the same day they made that decision, about the time that they kind of put it out into the world. He made sure to let me know, like, hey, I'm available to talk and make myself available to explain myself, and just to, not maybe like that way, but just to kind of come out and say, like, hey, we made this decision. I'm willing to come out and talk about it, and any questions people have, I'm willing to answer about it, which I thought was a really big move. And they put a statement out on social media, obviously. And Coach Petermeier talked in this interview. He said, I was wondering if we were even going to do that, if that was maybe appropriate, if that was the right thing. And I think it was, and I think it was the right decision. And they put it out there, and just that way everybody knew what the coaching staff, what the administration, I know activities director Norm Gallant also put out a statement, but just saying, hey, here's what happened. Here's why we're doing it, just because we want you to hear it from us, and we don't want it to kind of linger and just do things that sometimes small towns can do. And I thought it was a great interview. Kyle definitely had thought about what he was going to say. He definitely put a lot of effort into this decision, and just to get stuff out there. So I want to say it all with that. That guy was very intentional with that decision. It was not something he took lightly. And based on the way he answered that, I told him, hey, man, you have the floor. And he talked for a while about just everything and his thoughts and the timeline and everything. So I really appreciate him for his time, because he certainly could have just said, hey, it's a tough decision. I want to be with our team. I want to do that. The statement's up there. Do what you need to do. And he didn't. So I do want to give him a shout out for that. I just want to play this soundbite for you, Corey. This is a whole 10-minute interview we did. Go listen to Wolverines Weekly on Saturday. It's going to have the full conversation, but here's a little snippet of what we talked about, and kind of when things started to look like, hey, this might need to be a reality.
We'd be putting kids in a situation that A, they wouldn't be successful, but B, the biggest thing where we'd be putting them in a situation that would maybe create harm. And we don't want that at all for our young kids. I think you can put, we had some freshmen and sophomores playing obviously throughout the whole year. And I think you can definitely put them in games and put them in positions to be successful. But when you have to rely on, 9 or 10 of your 11 guys out there being 14 and 15 years old, that's just not a successful position to put them in. And we want to put our kids in the best position possible on the field, and also health-wise. So the biggest thing for us was the moment we knew that our kids wouldn't be in the best position health-wise. It was a really tough decision, honestly, just because we have some seniors, obviously, who weren't injured, but that would end their season. But for us, at the end of the day, it honestly was a pretty easy decision, because if you think about the kids and you think about them as kids and just being in high school and being as young as they are, it was pretty easy to say that we're going to put their health first and just go on with what we're doing. So I think the kids were, when we told them, I think a few of them were surprised, and a few of them were thinking, how are we going to do this? Like, how are we going to make it work? Because they know, they played in the game on Friday, and they know that we're pretty low with numbers, especially with our older kids getting injured. So for us, it was, like I said, it was an easy decision at the end of the day, because we care about them as kids and as people.
And there's a little bit of that snippet. Obviously, the full thing will be available on Wolverines Weekly this weekend. But Corey, I know we kind of have to wrap things up here, because we have some more content for later in the week we need to get working on. But just kind of that reaction to that quote.
No, he's right. It's everything we've talked about and kind of speculated about, and you could gather from the letter that he wrote and put out into the world on the WDC social medias, on their football social media. But this is a hard decision, because there's other kids whose seasons you have to end, and for some of those kids were seniors, and their last football game was not the expected last football game of their entire careers, and their careers came to a close. And it was nice to hear him say, we did not take this lightly. We considered the gravity of that and taking that away from those kids, but also what can be gained by with these other kids and their experience and their health and what's important to the program, the school, the kids as a whole. Yeah, you got to take your lumps, and that really, really sucks. And he made that clear, but he also made it clear that it was a decision that they absolutely had to do. So I look forward to hearing that full interview on Wolverines Weekly this weekend.
Yeah, and that's where you can hear it again, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, WDenaRadio.com, Superstation K106 mobile app. Also, you can listen to the show live at 9 a.m. every Saturday morning on KWAD. All right, Corey, one last thing, and then we're going to wrap things up for today. The Minnesota Wild had the first franchise history, first time that this has ever happened. We finally got a situation where we could do a goalie goal.
Nevis fires in, looking for a goalie goal. Gustafsson scores! Philip Gustafsson mobbed! We've got the goalie goal!
I mean,
it's worth it for the call. The call is, I appreciate the call more than I even appreciate the goalie goal.
Right. Philip Gustafsson able to do it, and just awesome. Awesome things all around. All right, Corey, we got some other stuff we have to do. We'll announce this coming up in the next, either at the end of this week or the beginning of next week. We got some great stuff on the sports desk. We're going to end it today. We'll see you guys next time.
The Morning Sports Desk, available on demand on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and WDenaRadio.com.